Hello and welcome to 2019. We will today continue the 2007 article by Terry Marks-Tarlow. Terry Marks-Tarlow. Fractal geometry as a bridge between realms. Between realms. 2007, we start looking at how the growing child, for instance, intermingles what is real with the imaginary. The imaginary is very close to the fractal. The fractal literally is a bridge between two realms. The imaginary, in mathematics, we also have imaginary numbers, and the real. They coincide in the fractal. You can think of the oft-mentioned coastline of the Norwegian coast. How in the coastline, that doesn't make any sense to speak of real coastline as opposed to non-real. They coincide. Intermingle. They go into each other. Co-joining. And there is an interpenetrative exchange between the terra firma of the rocky ground and the flowing water, constantly changing, constantly, permanently, reorganizing the coastline fractally. There are no linear relations in the universe. They simply do not exist. So this could also be compared to the coastline in the psyche between the unconscious, let's call that the water, the malleable, and the firm. That could be the body, could be the rocky coastline. Here you have an intermingling as well. And the psyche could also correspond to the imagined, the invented. Or why not fantasy? What you fantasize, what you wish, your desires, your wants, your inner wishes, and your personality that interpenetrates with the surrounding water, which is the outer region of reality, the limits of you going to something else. I really like that parallel that Terry Marks-Tarlow do here. It's very interesting and productive as well. in the sense it gives nurture for many new ideas. A development. I will continue to read on page 29 and dwell deeper into the article. During stage 2 of collective human consciousness, zero emerges as a symbol around the dawn of the Christian era. Within Persian semiotics, zero represents an important portmanteau, a sign that carries double meaning. In this case, by embodying paradox. Embodying paradox. Zero is a symbol form of nothing. That also means something. 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 In modern number notation, zero serves as a placeholder that enables us endlessly to recycle the same 10 digit. The same 10 digits. By eliminating the need for a different symbol to represent each new number. Each new number. Zero provides an invisible underground unity to the number system. We have also mentioned it has no content. It is like the proprioception. Here we see early glimmerings of Kaufmann's virtual logic, his logic. Strong, contradictory, or maybe fractal in this instance. The play of imagination that sharpens focus on real distinctions. On real distinctions. recycled digits brought the first formal sign of fractal dynamics within mathematics. Albeit in inchoate form. In inchoate form. Because full arithmetic expression involves self-similar nested structure on ever grander scales of magnitude across the tenths, the hundreds, and 1,000 number columns. Whereas modern number notation represents a somewhat trivial example of self-similarity in that it lacks the functional dimensionality of true fractal form. Sunny philosophers Patrick Grimm, Gary Marr, and Paul St. Denis assert significantly that all of mathematics and logic can be modeled on the computer as an infinitely expanding fractal system. Infinitely expanding fractal system. Figure 3 illustrates one aspect of the system, how paradoxes of self-reference can be iterated, finally, on the computer. The classic liar states, "This sentence is false. This sentence is false. False! Why?" In the interpersonal version, Socrates asserts Plato speaks falsely. Oh dear, Plato speaks falsely. While Plato counters, Socrates speaks truly. Socrates speaks falsely, while Socrates speaks truly, while Plato speaks falsely. Falsely. He speaks falsely. Fuzzy logic allows infinite valued variations, starting with the following two assertions. Assertions. Listen in now. Listen to the assertions. X equals X is true as Y. Why? Why is it so? Nobody knows. Y is as true as X is false. The assertions are translated mathematically as follows. X equals, in the formula you can look yourself, as these equations then are iterated on the computer, fractal images appear when escape time diagrams are colored according to how long it takes various pairs of points to cross certain thresholds. Certain thresholds. Robertson's third stage in the evolution of modern consciousness emerged during the Renaissance with the formal introduction of infinity. Of infinity! Of infinity! Using zero as an anchor, humans flew to previously unseen heights of abstraction. Unseen heights of abstraction. The discovery, invention of calculus independently by Newton and Leibniz captured both symbols of zero and infinity concretely within the single concept of a limit. Of a limit. Calculus permits the human mind to delve ever more flexibly under the surface of moving and irregular processes into the chaos of imaginary waters. Imaginary waters. in order to resurface with a new perception of order. With a new perception of order. With a new perception of order, quite different from the previous one. The simultaneous invention of perspective in art, plus René Descartes' method of analytic geometry, gave humankind an ever even sharper, downright three-dimensional view of distinctions in the natural world. In the natural world. Indeed. We have the invention of Brunelleschi. Brunelleschi. During the third stage, human beings stop projecting the contents of inner processes into the outer world. Or at least this is what they believed they were doing. Beginning with the Renaissance, all attention became fixated on how to categorize perceptible objects. The world of appearances became privileged over that of the imagination. And tools of science and math aided in this mission of objectifying perception. Objectifying perception. With everyone acting as if observers could be separated from processes of their observation. This period of collective consciousness accompanied the development of classical science, while anticipating the emergence of first-order cybernetics. First order. The fourth and current stage of self-reflexive consciousness arose during the 19th century, when previous seeds of recursion became concretely embedded into mathematical technique. Mathematical technique. Mathematical technique. Georg Cantor's introduction of the pigeonhole technique, by which numbers are paired one-to-one with subsets of themselves, brought recognition of multiple sizes of infinity. Eventually, the number of infinities proliferated until an infinite variety was unveiled. Unveiled! Unveiled! Unveiled. At the same time that conscious understanding of recursion became ever more deeply embedded in abstract systems of symbolization. Symbolization. Human consciousness was beginning to circle back around to conceptualize imaginative basis for its own unconscious processing. For its own unconscious processing. Unconscious processing. Unconscious processing. This is evident in the work of South American psychologist Ignacio Mateblanco, who uses the seeming illogic of infinite sets to characterize the nature of unconscious thinking, of unconscious thinking, of the thinking of the unconscious. The hallmark of infinite sets, that their subsets equate to the whole, is apparent psychologically whenever we generalize a single encounter to every case. Every case, every case, every case. This occurs, for example, in the immature psyche of young children found out calling all women mummy. They are all mummy. Mummy or mummy, I don't know. It also occurs in the immature psyche of adults guilty of stereotyping, racial bias, or misogyny. It is the left hemisphere, according to Ian McGilchrist. The left hemisphere. By contrast, Mate Blanco claims that consciousness of everyday distinctions rests on the mathematics of finite sets. Finite, finite, finite sets. Here, thinking is tethered to deductive methods of concrete discovery. Of concrete discovery. Objects either exist or do not, as deduced by minute-to-minute experience and guided by Boolean and Aristotelian logic, devoid of wild inductive leaps. Mate Blanco's brand of virtual logic, inspired by properties of infinite sets. Infinite sets. Anticipates this author's intrapsychic interpretation of fractal dynamics. Fractal dynamics. Fractal dynamics. As mathematically defined, fractals are partially infinite and partially finite. While the Euclidean dimension anchors and bounds them in the real world, they also partake in the infinite, which is necessary to calculate fractional dimensionality. Fractional dimensionality. As elaborated upon shortly, fractals occupy a twilight existence between real and idealized dimensions. Here, the symmetry of identity, self-similarity, paradoxically exhibits parts as complex and infinitely detailed as their whole. As their whole. As their whole. As their whole. Observers observing themselves. Imaginary numbers and hidden dimensions. Hidden dimensions. The shortest path between two truths in the real domain passes through the complex domain. Jacques Hadamard. By self-reflexively using numbers to code and reflect upon other numbers. Austrian mathematician Gödel brought this fourth stage of human self-reflexive consciousness to full fruition in the mid-20th century. In the mid-20th century. In the mid... in the mid-20th century. And second order cybernetics plus symbol makers using symbols to symbolize the symbolizing process itself, plus inherent limitations therein. Like an eyeball attempting to twist around to view its own mechanism, Gödel's mathematics plus the kybernetics of kybernetics make obvious that no observer can ever hope to observe the observation process fully. Without either receiving an incomplete view or becoming mired in paradox. Mired in paradox. Mired in paradox. Figure 4 illustrates how paradoxes of self-reference appear in the work of two different artists. The left frame portrays the author's rendition of Maurice Escher's famous drawing, The Art Gallery. An observer looks at a picture of a gallery that includes the observer himself. The observer himself. The perspective is continuous as it wraps from outside towards inside the observer. Inside the observer! How is it even possible? Yet, a point of discontinuity remains in the form of a blank spot in the center. The blank spot indicates a singularity, forming where all order breaks down, and the image dissolves recursively into internal contradiction. The right-hand frame, inspired by a David Hockney drawing, portrays self-reference as a canvas within a canvas. Implying a discontinuous relationship between external observation and the embedded nature of the self as observer. As observer! Just as a different picture on the lens can emerge with the next blink of an eye, with the next blink of an eye. This form of discrete representation displays crisp edges between embedded levels. Embedded levels. While I will not claim that fractals represent a symbol at the same level that 0 and infinity do, I will assert that the system of notion ushered in by fractal geometry represents a portmanteau embodying infinite finite continuous, discontinuous methods of symbolization, of symbolization. Symbolization. Here, recursive iteration on the imaginary plane reveals yet another level of complexity, both in nature and collective consciousness. Here, observers are even more complexly, self-reflexively and consciously entangled in the observed, in the observed, in the observed. In the observed. This fleshes out further Jung's intuition that number brings order into the chaos of appearances. Into the chaos of appearances. Within fractals, not only does what you see depend upon the scale of observation, on the scale of observation, but also the closer you look, the more there is to see. And here at this rather lovely saying, I will put my pause 2019. 2019. So here we found a lot of interesting things, and it goes nicely parallel what we learned from Hao Tang about proprioception in connection with Lee Smalling, Roberto Anga, and might specifically more Carlo Rovelli and his relational quantum mechanics. On page 29, first column, 6 lines down, 0 is a symbol form of nothing that also means something. Very good. Remember, proprioception, or the sense of oneself, has no content. It is 0. And therefore it can encompass both nothing and infinity. And this is also exactly the workings of fractality, how fractals work. They are both the most definite, the most exact, the most individual, personal, more personal even than a fingerprint, as well as they are iterative. Take a gander at the fern, how the bigger blades are having their correspondence in the smaller blades, and for every leaf you go down, you find the totality of everything in the iteration. You can compare, or you can even equal totality to generality and universality. This is how you can reach universals without losing yourself out from yourself, without losing imagination, fantasy, inspiration, development, and I'd say creativity. Maybe the most important thing that has disappeared. Universals today are merely taking away of both generality and particularity. There's a lovely description of this process on page 30. There's mentioning of different stages by Robertson. Look down on the first column on page 30. The simultaneous invention of perspective in art, plus René Descartes' method of analytic geometry, gave humankind an even sharper, downright three-dimensional view of distinctions in the natural world. And what happens is, with the invention of Brunelleschi, especially clearly clarified and depicted in The Conquest of Abundance by Paul Feyerabend, with Brunelleschi, art changed completely in a few years' time. The perspective and the aim for the horizon led to the idea that reality was strictly outside of yourself. Yes. And this disequality and disbalance began now promptly. It became stronger and stronger. We lost imagination. Creativity, as it is depicted today, is the accumulation by a computer of already fixed points. The absolute majority of people today think that the ChatGPT is actually intelligent in the human fashion. It can never, ever, not in a million lifetimes, procure any creativity whatsoever. It needs the inside, or the quantum inside, as, for instance, shown by Sir Roger Penrose. Without the inside, there is no imagination whatsoever. Whatsoever. In this next, the ultimate paragraph on page 30 on the left column, during this third stage, human beings stop projecting the contents of inner processes into the outer world. Into the outer world. Into the outer world. Into the outer world. And therefore, if you want to call them that, a couple of lines down here, 5, 6 lines, the world of appearances became privileged over that of imagination, and tools of science and math aided in this mission of objectifying perception. I'd say this objectifying of perception is the lack of generality and universality in the true sense. Something that can only be shown by the fern, for instance, remember that example. The fern makes it possible. It opens up for the possibility of understanding how universals and singularities, specificities, do not exclude each other mutually. They are actually enforcing each other. Only by iteration, massive iteration, can we bring forth development into universals, plurality. So you see here, both plurality and singularity stem from the zero. They are both contained within it. And it is this contentless property of zero that makes it possible to have them both, that is nothing and all, in one go. And this is not equal to, on the second column, but second paragraph, 20 lines down. It also occurs in immature psyche of adults guilty of stereotyping, racial bias, or misogyny. I'd say that needs a clarification or a specification. The fractal can give true generalities, true generalization. That is strictly not possible as long as you are fixated in an abstracted outside and also a sort of distant inside. Then you will not be able to reach into that in the same smooth way. it will be hardened, more difficult. It will not open up itself for friction to give more. It will be sort of a dead end. Well, I say thank you very much. We're going solo here. I will go to the Zoom app. Thank you very much for joining in, listening in. Have a beautiful morning, day, afternoon, or evening, whatever the time of day is at your place. Bye bye for now.